Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, May 21st. There's an enormous amount of weather that's going on right now in the country. The most severe and the most dangerous event is taking place in the middle part of our country. In fact, the stuff that's going on there is so intense that people who have an interest in that area should just stay informed from the National Weather Service. Stay up to date from them because the situation's constantly changing. It's not just with the violent tornadoes, but there's also a good chance for hail in many areas up to 4 inches in diameter. You know, when you go over a 25-mile radius, there's a small risk. When you say risk, we're talking about 4 out of 5 for this severe weather event. This is on a scale of 1 to 5. About a 40% chance for severe weather within a 25-mile radius for a good portion of Iowa, northwest Illinois, also portions of northern Missouri and other areas nearby. The Chicago area is at a number 3. A 3 is considered quite high. That's a 30% chance for severe weather within a 25-mile radius. Look at the forecast models. You'll see that this whole event, it's eventually going to develop into a squall line if it hasn't already. Tornadoes usually don't occur so much on squall lines, but in this case they will. Tornadoes are still expected with the squall line with 90-mile-per-hour wind gusts, tells us the National Weather Service. This squall line moves into Illinois and then heads towards the Chicago area, but this line weakens as it approaches Chicago later on this evening, 10 o'clock or so, according to what was advertised on windy.com. Or actually, I should say, according to what was advertised on the Storm Shield app. The Storm Shield app is a great way to stay up to date with the latest watches and warnings, but nothing could beat the NOAA Weather Radio, NOAA Weather Alert. That's the best way for people living in that part of the country. That's something that is always helpful when dealing with tornadoes. When you get further south, we're dealing with a major heat wave. Heat advisories have been issued for portions of southern Texas. We have some areas which have gone up to dew points of 83 degrees for the first time this week. In fact, the last time the dew point was 83 degrees was it was probably about 10 days ago, even more than that. It's been maybe 12 days since the previous 80-degree dew point event. This 80-degree dew point is not occurring with triple-digit heat, but we do have triple-digit heat occurring along with very humid conditions, dew points in the 70s. Our peak temperature right now is 112 degrees Fahrenheit at Rio Grande Village, Texas. That's about 45 degrees Celsius, 44 degrees Celsius. That's our peak temperature in Texas. 83-degree dew point is about 28 to 29 degrees Celsius dew point. The heat indices are just something phenomenal in those areas. You know, you have temperatures going into the mid-90s, low to mid-90s in places like Kingsville, around the Corpus Christi area, with a dew point in the low 80s. Heat indices are well into the 100 and teens, possibly even a little bit higher. Again, one has to wonder why the National Weather Service has limited this to an advisory and not a warning. So usually they explain that on their forecast discussion, which you would check Corpus Christi or the Brownsville National Weather Service forecast discussion. Both of those would probably deal with that. We have hot and humid weather occurring up into the St. Louis area for the second time this year. St. Louis has hit 91 degrees. We hit 91 earlier this year. There is slightly humid in St. Louis. We have temperatures in the 90s for portions of Oklahoma. Other areas of Texas also have temperatures in the 90s. Now, let's go on to talk about what's going on, this heat wave in Iran, India, other areas along the Persian Gulf. Before we get there, Israel is deserving of a mention. Heat advisories are in effect over there. It's called an orange warning, which is in effect for heat advisory. You know, it's heat excessive heat for portions of around the Dead Sea, areas north of there. I don't know the exact wording actually, but temperatures going well into the 100s this week for the eastern border of Israel. Central, southeast, east central, and even some areas of northeast Israel, temperatures going well into the hundreds over there. Peak temperature around 105 or a little bit higher, probably about 41 degrees Celsius for our heat temperature. India is on a whole new level. We have the weather service over there tells us that this is a very intense heat wave that's occurring. The heat wave now includes New Delhi. Temperatures are just on a scale of things that we generally would see in places like Death Valley, California. But India also gets heat like this. It comes in on something that's usually called the Lu winds. The Lu winds are winds very hot and dry, a lot of times dusty winds that come in from Pakistan reaching India. That brings India the hottest weather it can possibly get. Temperatures going into the upper 110s to lower 120s. And as you go further out, further into the forecast, the extended forecast, you'll even see some places in the mid 120s. People can take a look at that if you're traveling over there, so you'll want to prepare for that. One thing, though, that's very interesting is that the wet bulb temperatures are really low. They're really low over there. So what that means is that evaporative cooling is quite intense. See, if you have a mist, something that you could spray on you, it's very effective at cooling you off, despite the fact that temperatures are as hot as a sauna. But that type of a mist is very, very effective since there's very little humidity right now. Those cities could get a lot of humidity at times. Right now, there's very little humidity. That cannot be said for places right now in southeast Texas, Corpus Christi for sure. There's not much that a mist could do. You really need air conditioning to escape heat like that. To speak about just why the storms here in the Midwest are going to be so strong, that's because they're located along the Ring of Fire. The Ring of Fire is a ring. It goes right around a heat dome where there's continuous thunderstorm development. It's when the hot air collides with the cooler air. And with this type of heat and humidity, the feeding into the storms, it can really fuel up energy, very intense energy, because it's not just temperature that's a form of energy. Dew point is also a form of energy. So we're seeing something that is almost as intense as what happened in Houston last week when 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts went through. Currently, the National Weather Service again tells us about the 90-mile-per-hour wind gusts is what could be expected. Lots of heavy rain is also expected here in the Midwest. The state of Missouri included in this, and as you go south into Tennessee over the next few days, very heavy rain is forecasted there as well. I want to go over to Iran and just talk about, I know some people pronounce it Iran or Iran, talk about the situation, the weather conditions that seemed to have happened by the city Uzi, Iran, which is where this helicopter crash took place. It took place, from my understanding, about 5:30 a.m. Chicago time this past Sunday, May 19th. The Iranian Meteorological Service issued an orange warning for severe weather in that area just before this whole crash occurred. So it is certainly reasonable to believe that the crash was weather-related, as everyone's saying. There's no reason to really doubt that. Apparently there was snow, possibly heavy snow, along with fog and heavy rain. You hear a lot about the fog. You don't hear so much about the heavy rain. And the snow is something also that snow was also reported in that area. Something which is interesting is that when you look at this super intense heat that's occurring over other portions of Iran, when you go back towards the west coast of Iran, so Those of us that are familiar with the way heat operates here in the United States, especially like what's going on today, know all about the ring of fire that occurs outside a heat dome. So when you first hear about a helicopter crash that occurred in a part of Iran outside of the heat dome, one would assume from the United States, without looking into it, would just assume that they had some type of super intense storms that occur outside of heat domes. Now, it's not clear exactly if that's what happens over there, but there's strong argument to say that that's not what happens is because of the lower dew points, despite the fact that it's located in between the Persian Gulf and the Caspian Sea. The Caspian Sea could also generate a source of pretty good humidity, especially as we get later into the summer. The water temperatures are much higher than one would ever think, especially going up into those northern latitudes. Because of the lower dew points, I don't know if there really is a ring of fire around there. That's something that would need to be looked into. Another thing going on today, so you have Iran. When you go up to the north, you have the Caspian Sea, as we've mentioned, and we do have summer heat developing to the west of the Caspian Sea. In fact, temperatures going into the 80s, even north of Berlin, Germany, and Warsaw, Poland, temperatures going well into the 80s today, low and mid 80s. We're finding European computer model shows forecasted 80s going all the way up into the 50 latitude, 55 degree north latitude area. So this is probably the first time of such expansive summer heat in that area. We probably will hit 30 degrees Celsius in some isolated spots up there. The heat is short-lived. The summer heat is short-lived right now, but we know as over the next couple of weeks, the heat just expands so rapidly up there. It's just something really phenomenal to watch, how you go from snow. I saw some cities which they were forecasting snow. The European computer model shows snow, and then 2 days later, temperatures going into the upper 70s. It's stuff, that it does occur around here, and, Colorado especially. But, the difference is that over there will come a time where the heat will just take over day after day after day. Now, of course, summer heat over there might be temperatures in the 70s, but occasionally they do go into the 80s. In Astrakhan on the Caspian Sea, all the way up, probably 45 degrees north latitude, equivalent to portions of Minnesota. Normal high over there, 91 degrees when you head into July. Quite a hot temperature, and they are on the Caspian Sea, a part of the sea which has shallow water, so the water temperatures get quite warm, even approach 80 degrees. That's already by the early to midsummer. Pretty impressive stuff, and dew points could rise into the 60s, at times even higher in that part of the world. Pretty intense, especially when you consider what they have to go through in the winter. China right now has heat advisories in effect for portions of China, and it looks like the Thailand area as well. In any event, much of the country is enjoying beautiful weather. We will say that the parts of the Chicago area, Pontiac, Illinois, temperatures went into the low 90s today, and the temperatures were borderline very close to 90 degrees just a couple hours ago, and temperatures may have ended up hitting 90 when you get to, by the end of the day in Midway Airport. But up here, it's really because of the lower dew point air. Dew points have dropped into the 50s. So all of that energy is being transferred over into temperature, and that's why the temperatures are going up over here. You'll see the 90s. It's not so common when you get into Illinois. It's mostly 80s. We do have 91 degrees occurring in St. Louis as well, but St. Louis has higher dew points in the mid-60s. St. Louis is pretty much an isolated spot with temperatures in the low 90s, along with some of the west and southwest suburbs of Chicago. Stay safe. I wish everybody a wonderful day. Remember to make sure you have an alert weather radio or stay in touch with some source to get the immediate warnings if you're in the Midwest, if you're in the state of Iowa or portions of northwest Illinois. To play it safe, you might want to have one for the Chicago area tonight. They do tend to weaken as they approach the lake. That's even been pointed out tonight, but that's not a guarantee. Stay safe. Thank you for listening.
You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm.
We have a powerhouse typhoon which has developed off in the Pacific Ocean. Extreme heat continues over the desert southwest.
A big shockaroo to many of you. This is especially true in regards to what's going to be going on in Alaska. We have parts of the world that are so hot right now.
Temperatures are expected to go into the low 130s. What also makes the situation absolutely spectacular over there is the enormous differences between night and day.
We have a remarkable weather pattern change that's going to be taking place over the next few days. We're going from one extreme to the next extreme.
Small soft hail is falling with the storm. There's the possibility that snow squalls may develop. 27.1 barometric pressure. Feet of snow are falling in Japan when there's intense weather. That's a time of celebration. Just Google weather with enthusiasm and they're all going to come up.